$1 billion?
Yeah, it's over there.
It's over $1 billion.
Yes.
One of the most famous men of all time died broke despite generating billions in his career, and $1 billion back then was a whole nother number.
Beatles? More than that. He owned half of Sony.
Right. Yeah, he did. Yeah.
You know how big Sony is, bro? I want to know.
Crazy to say that this guy was actually a great businessman and made some smart investments. He even owned a massive portion of Sony. Yes, Sony at one point, he had taken down the label.
Sony, being the artist that I am at Sony, I've generated several $1 billion for Sony, several billion, and they really thought that my mind is always on music and dancing, and it usually is, but they never thought that this performer myself would outthink them.
Yeah! Say it, Michael! Tell the story!
Michael Jackson grew up in a working class, low income family. He and his 8 siblings were raised by their mother, a homemaker, and their father, a steel mill worker, in a small 2-bedroom house. Despite the financial struggles and harsh, intense discipline imposed by their father, Michael and his brothers developed extraordinary musical talents. Once the Jackson 5 had signed with Motown Records and rocketed to international superstardom, the family's financial situation changed dramatically, and they relocated to a large estate in California.
Yeah, Michael was awesome at that point, you know. They could sing. They could really sing really good for young boys like that. But Michael was dynamic. He was 10 years old.
Michael Jackson confirmed in a documentary, Living with Michael Jackson, that he'd been receiving $200,000 checks in the mail when he was around 12 or 13 years old. These early royalties reflected the massive success of Jackson 5's initial Motown hits.
I remember getting $200,000 checks in the mail when I was like 12, 13 years old. I used to get these monthly. My father would say, well, what do you want to do with it? I'd say, well, of course we should put it away.
You were 12 years old?
Yeah, but he would give me a certain amount to buy things that I wanted to buy. And what I would buy was some bubble gum and some candy and stuff like that.
1980s, when Michael Jackson really started to develop global stardom, he earned $50 to $125 million in 1 year. In 1985, he bought the ATV music catalog, including 250 of the Beatles songs, for $47.5 million. One of the smartest music business moves ever.
They love the irony.
And he bought all your songs.
Yeah.
And you've said to him, listen, I'll give you fair market value. Let me buy my songs. I want to own them.
He came over. I said, what do you want to do? He said, make some hits. I said, well, that sounds good. So we got a little relationship there. It was quite good fun. And it is true, he did ask me, he said, got some advice, Paul? Yeah. I took him aside and said, diddle-a-diddle, and think about getting into music publishing. And I thought he was joking. He said, oh, I'm going to get yours. Well, I went, he slapped him on the back. Right. Good one, I thought that was a joke. And then I just got rung up and said, he's got yours. Oh. And I thought, hey, you know what is weird? I don't mind that because he had business, all the cash. Yeah. Someone was selling it and he bought it. What I don't like is that I've actually written to him a couple of times. We're dishing the dirt. Howard, you got me at it.
Go ahead, yes.
I don't normally.
You wrote him a couple of letters.
Wrote him a couple of letters saying, Michael, don't you think after even if I was just a writer on the payroll, after 30 years of being reasonably successful for this company you now own, don't you think I could have a raise?
Yeah.
And he said, oh, well, that's just business.
I did read recently that because of some cash flow problems he's having, aren't your songs up for grabs?
In fact, this might be a good time for me and you to go in and buy these songs.
The trouble is, I wrote them for nothing.
Right.
And buying them back at these phenomenal sums, it's just...
It rubs you the wrong way.
I can't do it.
Going into the late 80s and early 90s, he made hundreds of millions and was living like a billionaire.
How much money was you really making?
Normally with a record label, you'd get maybe £1 a copy per CD. He had the biggest deal of all time. I think it was £3 or £4 every time one was sold. So he might Thriller sold 100 million copies. So do the maths on that, that's 300 million right away. His Beatle catalogue was bringing in about $80 million a year on average on royalties alone. For the trial, it was all added up. It was about $8 billion he earned.
In late 1983, following the massive success of Thriller, Jackson alongside his brothers, the Jacksons, signed a groundbreaking endorsement endorsement deal with PepsiCo worth $5 million, roughly $16 million in today's money. This was the largest celebrity endorsement deal in history at the time and revolutionized music brand partnership. We see in 1984, during the filming of a Pepsi commercial in Los Angeles, and a sixth take, a malfunction occurs, which ignited Michael Jackson's heavily gelled hair. As he descends a staircase performing, he suffers a second-degree burn to his scalp, and he continues performing briefly before the flames were extinguished. Jackson was rushed to the local hospital, and the incident widely believed to have contributed to his later painkiller dependency and increased focus on cosmetic procedures. Pepsi continued their campaign despite the incident, and there was an out-of-court settlement where Pepsi paid him $1.5 million, probably worth $4.4 million in today's money, and he donates the entire amount to a medical center which helped him out, which established the Michael Jackson Burn Center in his honor. It didn't affect their partnership. Jackson later announced a second major deal with Pepsi. Reports varied on the money, but it's around $10 to $15 million, which obviously could be up to $50 million today's money. And this deal was a global deal covering 20 countries and helped finance the Bad album and Bad World tour.
Am I right in believing that Michael's life began to change from the moment he was severely burned doing the Pepsi commercial?
Yes.
Do you recall that day?
Yes, I do. Yes. I wasn't there, but I was home. And I got a phone call. And they told me Michael was burnt. He was on the way to the hospital. And I couldn't get ready fast enough to see how to get down there.
Did you see those burns?
At the time I didn't, because they had him in there fixing him up and all. But when I saw it, it was a time when they call the stretching of the skin, and he showed me where they had put I don't know what it's called, but it's in between your scalp and your head, and you pump it up to keep the skin stretched. So it was really bad, very bad.
Did he talk to you about the effect that had upon him?
Yes, because it burned him so badly, his hair wouldn't grow back in the top of his head. And he didn't like that part of it.
So that's when he had to start wearing wigs?
Yes.
And I guess for a young man, that's a terrible
yes, it is.
Time, a terribly difficult thing to have to do.
Yes.
And for Michael Jackson, who was a performer.
They had be before the world, and he didn't have his hair.
It's also, as I understand, when he started to experience pain.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes. It was painful all the time, you know.
Michael Jackson in the 1980s and early 1990s was the best celebrity at making money. He would put out albums and they would be instant bestsellers, and that was at a time when albums actually made money. He would do tours and make $50 to $100 million a year. He was really one of the best music acts at taking his fame, his songs, and monetizing it, and he was quite a brilliant man when it came to business.
In a typical year, how much was he taking in? How much was he spending?
At the time of his trial in 2005, it was estimated that he was bringing in about $20 million a year. That came from royalties from songs, both his own and the Beatles catalog. He was never going on the road anymore, and the way a musician really makes a lot of money is going out on the road, and so he was only bringing in $20 million a year. But he was spending $30 to $40 million a year. He would go on these lavish spending sprees in Las Vegas, in Europe, in Asia, and that was Michael Jackson's really his downfall financially as his life grew to an end. He was spending on art, he was spending on houses, he was spending on meals, wine, you name it, Michael Jackson was spending on it.
Michael Jackson as a businessman, how would you rate him?
Michael Jackson in the peak of his career was a stellar businessman. As his life wore on and he became more of a reclusive individual and less of an entertainer, enablers, entourages, handlers really screwed his finances up, and I think he withdrew from Michael Jackson, the brand, very much so, and allowed people to kind of hijack his finances. And he didn't do himself any good by going on these lavish spending sprees.
He bought the Neverland Ranch for $17 million and spent $35 million transforming it into a private amusement park with a zoo, trains, and a movie theater.
Do you come out here on your own?
Yeah.
How often?
All the time.
You just come out on your own?
Yes.
What, and go on a ride?
Yep. Usually the carousel, I'll play music. I love playing classical music on the carousel. Because I love something like Childhood or Smile.
As an adult, Jackson compensated for his lost youth by creating his Neverland Ranch. He was trying to relive his childhood, often surrounding himself with children to experience the carefree youth he was denied. One thing about Michael Jackson that was documented a few times is he liked to spend ridiculous amounts of money. There was a documented $5 million shopping spree, and he would do stuff like this often.
This one, I got this table, this chess set.
It's only 89,000. It's sold, look.
I bought this one, right? Yeah. That's what sold sign means for me. I put that on the list. Did we get those? Why don't we order those?
You have the space for all of this.
Yeah, I do.
You've got space?
Yeah.
And we bought in the house in Neverland?
No, this would be for another house.
Oh, for another one?
Yeah.
Okay.
We bought these, right? And these.
You like your own, don't you?
Yeah. And these. Table, these, right? These?
Yes. Oh, that's only 275,000 each. That's $500,000 for those two.
But there was a lot of money that Michael Jackson saved, and of course he made that crazy Beatles investment. Michael Jackson was doing the influencer type stuff before it even existed, where he was utilizing his brand to get free stuff constantly, but it was the paparazzi that was doing the job for him of publicizing where he was staying.
Michael Jackson, he won't pay for any hotels. So if we go to London or we go to New York, he knows the value his brand will bring a hotel. So before he goes there, he will get us or his people to contact the hotel saying, listen, Michael Jackson's looking at staying at your hotel for the next 10 days. He wants the presidential suite. He'll do it free of charge and he'll publicize the fact that he's there. Fans will know, the paparazzi will know. You'll get all the publicity, but we're not paying £10,000, £15,000 a night. And then the calls will always come back saying, yeah, deal done. He won't pay for anything.
Went through life, even though he had all the money, he didn't have to pay for anything.
Latest Ferrari, they want to give it to Michael Jackson as a gift. In the hope, that they'll see him driving in it and it'll reflect on their brand because he's the biggest brand in the world. Not really into cars, man. It's time to send it to them. I've been there and seen it.
As we move into the 90s now, the Michael Jackson debt was mounting. He had $150 million due in high spending and loans against assets. In 2005, there was a child molestation trial with a massive legal bill at the end of it, the loss of the endorsements and public image damage. He largely stopped touring after this.
He was investigated by the FBI for 10 years. People following him and everything. He had his phones wired and tapped. We all know about the phone tapping that went on. He got judged in the hardest courts in the land on 14 counts of child molestation. He was the biggest star in the world. I couldn't tell you, Stephen, how much media was outside that courtroom. Helicopters flying. Everyone was there. That district attorney at the time, Tom Sneddon, was the same guy who failed in 1993. He wanted to try and make a name for himself, put Michael Jackson in jail. Michael felt it was a racism thing. It cost him a lot of money, that trial, to the defense. It was 12 million, basically. That's what it cost him. 12 million and lots of brand deals and so forth. And bear in mind, I've got a long organisation with hundreds of thousand kids linked to it. And I knew Michael right from like 98 to 2009. I would not associate myself with someone, Stephen, who was anywhere like that. Because they didn't file a criminal suit. I don't know if you know that. Back in 93, they filed a civil only, which is a bit strange, isn't it? If one of my 6 kids were molested, I would want them to go to jail and be hung. I'm telling you. So this family, they went after his money. They didn't file a criminal suit. So his insurance company decided, listen, you got this world tour. It's called Dangerous. He was taking part all around the world. We're in the middle of it. This is killing your health, Michael. Whether you like it or not, his insurance company were just going to get rid of it, pay it off. And he didn't want that. He wanted to go to try and fight it, but there was nothing to go and fight. He had to get back on the road and do his thing. At the time, it went and gone, probably the worst thing he ever done in his life. But then he had no control of it, Steve. When you have record companies, you're just an artist. You're not in charge of everything. They dictate what you do.
What actually happened with all these accusations around Michael Jackson's name? This goes all the way back to 1993. Jordan, at 13, introduced via family connections, alleged repeated sexual abuse, including fondling and oral sex at the Neverland branch during trips. The LAPD investigated searches of Neverland and other properties were found with nude boyed images, apparently photography books, some inscribed by Michael Jackson, but no physical evidence of DNA or medical confirmation, including the guy himself from Home Alone denied any abuse.
Well, it was our opinion, and I think we proved it, that this family began to come up with these allegations of molestation and conspiracy only when they realized that they were on the way out, that Michael Jackson was sick of them, didn't want to deal with them anymore, didn't want them on his property. They were calling him daddy. They appeared to want a future with Michael Jackson that he didn't want with them. So our theory was that as soon as they realized they were being eased out, they needed to do something else to stay involved in his life and get a big payday, and this is what they came up with. We only called witnesses we thought had something important to tell a jury, and that includes the celebrities we called. Now, Jay Leno was interviewed by the Santa Barbara Sheriff's Department and secretly recorded by the sheriffs. He didn't know he was being recorded, and he told them words to the effect that this family had contacted him, that the 13-year-old accuser had tried repeatedly to get through to him, and that finally he had a conversation with him. He said that the 13-year-old sounded, overly rehearsed, sounded scripted. There seemed to be a woman in the background, directing what he said, and he got a bad feeling about what this young man was saying to him. And he thought they wanted money, although they didn't actually ask for it. And after that conversation, he told the staff not to let them put any calls through to him again. Now, just so you know, his lawyer didn't want him to testify. And when I first called his lawyer tried to say that he didn't remember what had happened. And I told his lawyer that we had a recording of the phone call, and his lawyer was shocked to hear that because he didn't know there had been a secret recording, nor had he heard it. And I said, maybe you'd like me to send it to you. And I sent it to him, and I said, look, we're going to subpoena him. He can get on the stand, and if he doesn't remember, we're going to refresh his recollection with this recording, and I don't think that's the way you want this to happen. Now, George Lopez was called by the prosecution. If they hadn't called him, we were going to talk about their efforts to get money from him, even going so far as to accuse him of stealing money from the child's wallet. Chris Tucker had interacted with this family on numerous occasions. He felt they took him for a ride. I remember him telling me when I first met him that he was told this child had cancer. He wanted to help them out. He invited them to the set in Las Vegas of Rush Hour 1. He thought they would spend a day, and they ended up spending, I think it was 10 days or 2 weeks, and billing him for the entire amount. And he went to Michael Jackson in Florida and said, be careful, something's wrong. Michael Jackson used to have a rule that every time he gave a concert around the world, he would visit a children's hospital to be as good to children and as kind to them as possible. He wanted to help this child overcome cancer, and he took great pride in the fact that he had had something to do with this child going into remission and beating cancer. He never saw the forces of darkness that were circling his life, and it's very sad.
In a civil lawsuit, the Chandlers sued Jackson for $30 million. Jackson's team alleged extortion, supported by a recorded call where Jordan's father discussed destroying Jackson's career and demanded money. The outcome was an out-of-court settlement for approximately $23 million in total. $15.3 million to Jordan in a trust and $1.5 million each to his parents and $5 million to lawyers. Jackson's insurance carrier reportedly paid off much of this over his objections with no admission of guilt, and Jackson said he settled to avoid his career disruption.
Why did you settle the case then? Why did you settle the case? And it looks to everyone as if you paid a huge amount of money. Most of that's to get silence. I talked to my lawyers and I said, can you guarantee me that justice will prevail? And they said, Michael, we cannot guarantee you that a judge or a jury will do anything. And with that, I was like catatonic. I was outraged. How much money? Totally outraged. So what I said, I have got to do something to get out from under this nightmare. All these lies and all these people coming forward to get paid and these tabloid shows, just lies, 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 lies. So what I did, we got together again with my advisors, and they advised me, it was hands down, a unanimous decision, resolve the case. This could be something that could go on for 7 years. How much money? Let's get it behind us. Can you say how much? It's not what the tabloids have printed. It's not all this crazy outlandish one. No, it's not at all. I mean, the terms of the agreement are very confidential.
The settlement, later featured in a 2005 trial, was presented by the defense as non-admissive and insurance-driven. In 2003, the documentary Living with Michael Jackson had various accusations against him. But Michael Jackson lost out a lot of money throughout his career and defended himself with legal fees, and a bunch of documentaries were obviously made after he passed away. But Michael Jackson was acquitted after an exhaustive investigation and trial. Supporters emphasized no convictions, extortion claims, and jurist statements. Critics point to patterns, settlements, and later accusations, but no criminal conviction ever resulted. Through the FBI files that were later released, showed there was no credible evidence leading to further action. For Michael Jackson to attend all these court hearings and stuff at the time was not worth it. This settlement was there just to close this out. Many people do still think there was a lot of stuff dodgy about Michael Jackson, and others think the complete opposite, that he was just someone that missed out on his own childhood.
I don't read all the things written about me.
I wasn't aware that the world thought I was so weird and bizarre. But when you grow up, as I did, in front of 100 million people since the age of 5, you're automatically different. My childhood was completely taken away from me. There was no Christmas, there was no birthdays. It was not a normal childhood, no normal pleasures of childhood. Those were exchanged for hard work, struggle, and pain. I realized that many of our world's problems today, from the inner city crime to large-scale wars and terrorism and our overcrowded prisons, are a result of the fact that children have had their childhood stolen from them. The magic, the wonder, the mystery, and the innocence of a child's heart are the seeds of creativity that will heal the world. I really believe that.
No matter what happened in the case, when them accusations are on you, they stick in many ways. People still to this day believe that he done things that were extremely wrong. Brands obviously began to disassociate with him, and it had a profound impact on his mental health, where Michael Jackson increased taking medication constantly, and we see that a doctor gave him too much at a certain point, and that's when we lost Michael Jackson. But from the point these cases were coming up, Michael Jackson was losing loads of his money. His income dropped significantly while spending and interest payments stayed high. He reportedly had earned $20 million a year from catalog, but was spending at least $30 to $50 million.
Michael Jackson was in big debt for years before he passed away.
He was spending far more money than he was bringing in. And what he ended up doing was putting up his publishing catalog holdings as collateral against a loan from Sony Records.
That's right.
And then when he died and defaulted, all that money went back to a company called Sony ATV.
And Michael started spending quite a bit of money, tens of millions of dollars on all the music videos. All of the record company would pay for it up front. Michael had to repay that through his royalties. And then he spent $35 million on redoing Neverland. And then, of course, he had the settlement in '93. And obviously, those allegations harmed Michael's career. So slowly, his finances were in peril. When Michael died, he was $500 million in debt. He was already in debt in the mid-90s when he still had good management. It's partly Michael's fault, but a big part of it is also his management structure, unfortunately. And it was awful for about a decade.
He started borrowing hundreds of millions, using his music catalogue and the Neverland Ranch as collateral. He had high interest rates, sometimes 7 to 17%, which could have been negotiated better. He had reported assets in 2007 of $568 million, but the debts were climbing along with that at $331 million, and the cash flow problems were getting severe. In 2008, Neverland nearly foreclosed with a loan of $24.5 million in default, but he ended up getting saved by another investor.
In 1999, Michael Jackson thought he was going to get his masters back in 1999. He finds out around 1999, Art, that he not getting his masters back until 2009. The year he died. Are you following me on this, Art? Let me say that one more time. Let me say this one more time. Michael Jackson thought he was going to get his masters back in 1999. His lawyers played him. He finds out in 1999 he's not getting his master recordings back until 2009, the year he died. I think you know where I'm going with this. So now, Art, Tommy Mottola tells Michael Jackson, if you don't extend your contract, we're not going to finance Invincible. Michael Jackson said, I'm not signing no contract extension with you devils. I want out. So they sabotage Invincible, Art, to put him in debt. Why did they want Michael Jackson in debt? To try to force him to sell his personal catalog and the joint ATV catalog, Art. Sony Records was bankrupting Michael Jackson to try to force him to turn over all of his music. They signed with him to destroy him and take his music. Same thing Warner Brothers did with Prince, allegedly, that led to his premature execution.
In 2009, Michael Jackson was preparing for his That Is It comeback tour in London, but died June 25th, 2009 at the age of just 50. In court documents in 2024, it showed that he had over $500 million in debt to 65 plus creditors, some debt in default with extremely high interest. His estate also owed $40 million now to AEG Live for the cancelled tour because he had passed away, and Neverland was in jeopardy again.
Let's talk a little bit about the king of pop, Mr. Michael Jackson. Apparently, when he died, he was at least $400 million in debt. When you have that much debt and then you pass away, who has to pay that debt?
So every person alive, right? Everybody in the United States, whatever, they have what's called an estate. An estate is everything that you own, but it's also everything that you owe. So if you owe $440 million of debt, your estate is responsible for that. Now, if you had a trust or if you had wills or if you had whatever, then that all gets divvied out however it needs to be. But the estate is going to pay for what is owned or what is owed. I apologize. What's unique about celebrities, for whatever reason, especially super high profile icons, if you would, that their net worth escalates immensely after they die, you know, especially if it's someone that's younger, that's an unexpected death. And so I've heard that Michael Jackson's worth substantially more now than he was when he was alive. And I'm assuming the estate just paid that debt and it's moved on.
After his death, the estate was taken over and they used the music catalogue as collateral to restructure and pay off the debts. Of course, people's music surges after they pass away, and it's the same with Michael Jackson. In 2016, Sony bought the remaining 50% of Sony ATV for $750 million. Between 2018 and 2024, there was an additional huge catalogue master sale, hundreds of millions and more, and his estate earnings now are 2.5 to 3.5 billion since his death. Right now, Sony Music Entertainment own a 50% stake in Jackson's recorded masters and publishing catalogue, and the Michael Jackson estate retains the remaining 50% ownership of Jackson's masters, recording and publishing asset. The managers of this estate distribute earnings into the Michael Jackson Family Trust, so he's still able to support his family. So luckily, Michael Jackson did die broke, but his assets increased massively for him to be able to pay off his debt, because many times when artists die, their music lives on forever, and Michael Jackson wasn't alive to keep spending this money.
So this tweet says Michael Jackson has now surpassed 100 million monthly listeners on Spotify for the first time ever.
What the fuck is happening right now?
I mean, let me just try to put this into perspective for you guys who are still doubting Michael Jackson's greatness. Not only has this man found a way to pass 100 million monthly listeners on Spotify, because he has passed Drake, Bad Bunny, Taylor Swift, and Lady Gaga's monthly listeners on Spotify. I mean, I'm gonna be honest, I think we need to call a flag on the play. Because he's not even in the same fucking lobby as us.
Many years later, and he still gets hundreds of millions of streams and has influence on brands, like over the recent documentary and his Pepsi situation.
Pepsi sales have officially started to decline, all because of the Michael Jackson movie. Yeah, I am not kidding. So as all we likely know, recently the Michael Jackson movie was released, and there was a scene in the Michael Jackson movie that was recreated from a real-life incident that Michael Jackson went through when he was filming a commercial for Pepsi and his hair ended up catching on fire. So after seeing that scene in the Michael Jackson movie, it has caused people to do research on the real-life incident when that actually happened to Michael Jackson in real life, and they discovered just how much, that affected Michael Jackson's entire life, and many people blame Pepsi for Michael Jackson passing away. So with that, it has caused many people to just no longer support Pepsi. People are unfollowing Pepsi all across social media. People are no longer buying any Pepsi-related products or Pepsi drinks or anything like that. And because of all that, their sales are now officially declining. So definitely a very interesting situation, that is for sure. Just goes to show, how much of an impact the Michael Jackson movie is currently having on the world right now, and, making people, do research on Michael Jackson and discover things that they never knew about him. So, yeah.
Something that we've learned in this video is that massive celebrity musicians actually become more valuable after they pass away. They're not here to take their cut on things. They're not here to spend their money that they're earning and waste it on music videos and stuff. Their music just lives on and people can generate incomes from that, and the record labels always win in some way. But obviously in this case it turned out well thanks to Michael Jackson being very smart with his money and ended up 50% in his estate. But many artists have ended up with either nothing or very little throughout the years and even when they pass away. So Michael Jackson did die in an absolute financial mess and a bunch of trouble, but Michael Jackson carried on making billions even once he had passed away.